Hello, I'm Paul Gardner, and I'm here with Richard Charnock, winemaker at Pentage Winery. A number of years ago, AromaLoc started working with Alpha Omega Winery in Napa Valley, California. We were interested in developing AromaLoc for their application because of their obviously status in the wine industry and the superb wines that they do make. We developed with T&N Coopers a removable barrel head that would allow the wine to be punched down during fermentation. Their red wines are all made barrel fermented with open tops in groups of 4. And the challenge was, could we use AromaLoc technology on that basically format? We've now got some samples here from the 2019 vintage, which everybody's been excited about. I've had Richard come into the room and try the 3 wines in front of him here, blind. And I'd like him to summarize basically what he felt he found from those 3 wines.
All right, well, I'll go through these wines one at a time. We have, as Paul said, 3 wines, exact same batch. And as Paul said, the experiment being different applications of the AromaLoc technology. So going through wine 1 on the nose, lots of fruit, good concentration, not a lot of oak. On the palate, very ripe fruit, good concentration, great tannin, great structure. Very young wine, but very nice. Going into tank wine 2. Again, lots of really nice fruit, very ripe fruit. I'd assume very typical of Napa Valley. But on wine number 2, a lot more concentration of oak toast, wood aromatics. They play very well with the fruit on the wine. On the palate, again, very ripe fruit. A little bit more concentration and texture of fruit, I find. Mid palate, a little bit longer. Tannins more integrated on the finish. I would just say a little rounder, lusher, more full-bodied stuff, flavor profiles I'm getting, and a lot more of that barrel concentration on the nose. Going into wine 3. Quite similar to wine 2, I would say, as far as overall flavor profile. A little bit subdued in the oak aromatics and toast aromatics that would come from the barrel ferment. Good tannin, good structure, good fruit on the mid palate. Length not quite as long as wine 2, but again, nice tannin, good fruit, good structure. I would find wine 2 and 3 quite similar. Wine 2 being a little more concentrated, showing a bit more oak, a bit more texture and weight on the mid palate. For me, the one standalone wine would be wine 1, which shows a lot of fruit, a lot of brightness, but not showing a lot of that oak characteristic that would come potentially from a barrel fermentation. Closer to more of a, I would say, a stainless steel or a neutral vessel fermentation, in my opinion. And that would be what I get through from these 3 wines.
Okay, Richard Charnock and Paul Gardner, thank you very much. That's edifying. And personally speaking, I can't wait to give wine number 2 a try. And before we go, can someone do a reveal and tell us
What's wine with
do we
the
know?
3 wines?
Yes.
We can. Wine 1 is actually the control wine. So as much as these were all fermented, it's interesting. And we've tried this actually now with 4 people here with the COVID. It's a little hard to get big groups. But wine 1 is the control wine. So And then wine 2 is the AromaLoc machine going onto the wine, onto the barrel, or being on the barrel to start, but being turned on at the beginning of fermentation. Then they waited for a day after peak fermentation to turn on the AromaLoc machine on on wine 3. Just to reiterate what Richard was saying, when we've all tried these, it's almost like one of these 3 wines is not the same as the other 2. It's distinctly just it's nice fruit, nice Cabernet wine. It's got tannins from the grapes, but then you go into the next 2 glasses and you go, wait a minute, did somebody here play with finishing tannins or oak? You know, has somebody put oak into these wines? It just punches out, and until this we tried these wines under this barrel fermented kind of game. It amazes me that you're not concentrating fruit aromas in this case. You're concentrating oak barrel aromas.
Absolutely.
And tastes.
And knowing the outcome of what Paul just said, it shows in the wines when you go through the process in your head that wine 2 would have had the longest pressurized seal on top of the fermentation that encompassed all of those aromatics and aromas that are being produced within that confined space. Is that
they weren't lost.
They weren't lost. Exactly. And you would in wine 1 they went somewhere. In wine 2, obviously that surface area was under pressure for less time.
Well, or to put it this way, there's no pressure, but it wasn't. The aromas were allowed to escape.
Correct. Yeah. Instead of being transferred back into the headspace.
Yeah. It's like the outlier, the one wine, and you can put it anywhere in the group you want. You're gonna pick this up blind in a heartbeat. It actually brings to mind another thing that you're gonna be able to save on. You're gonna be save on oak costs if you're doing barrel fermented reds, because you're getting, the game is to get extraction out of that barrel during the primary fermentation, but it's amazing how much is actually lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
And boom, in 2 and 3 where you're going, it's
a vast difference from wine 1, and interesting choices to be made by a winemaker between 2 and 3. I mean, you can less if you wanted less, you could leave it on for less time. If you want full extraction, you leave it on the full time. And you really get that full extraction.
From what you're saying, it sounds to me as though a layperson who was there sampling these wines might fail to recognize the fact that the control wine and the 2 AromaLoc treated wines are actually from the same barrel. The same.
That's the comment across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like wines 2 and 3 in this case, the experimental wines are not from the same lot. I wasn't joking. It's as if somebody has added finishing tannins to those wines after the barrel fermenting took place for all 3.
Wow.
It's It's
a really a big improvement as far as extraction of the barrel and the profile that the barrel would bring to the wine.
Almost, and I'm going to come out with a bean counter now as the winery owner. I'm going to say that what it would mean to us is if this was my program and I was doing this was my barrel fermented program, I would literally probably be doing far less barrel ferments. I would be doing it immediately, turning it on immediately in the fermentation. And I would be saying, instead of now needing to we'll put it this way, you'll never attain this, because the only way you're going to attain it after is maybe long barrel aging time or possibly finishing tannins. So unless you want this bomb of too much of this would be just too much. So I would probably say you'd go 25% of your wine would be under an AromaLoc machine, and then you could do the others in stainless and put it back in, and you're going to have the same impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, you could save on a lot of time aging in barrel.
Time aging in barrel and a lot of labor in punching down these barrels and playing that game.
Okay, John. Well, thanks very much for that. That's incredibly interesting. And knowing what we know about AromaLoc technology, hardly surprising but it's always great to have what we think is true verified. So again, Paul Gardner and Richard Charnock, thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Cheers. Thanks.